Many people believe many different things in this life. Many people learn from different resources and hold different values than others. One thing that's more important than belief and more altruistic, may be an important term, is the matter of experience and perception. Now, it's important and radically important to remind ourselves of what a critical thought process is resembled by. And in order to do so, in order to actually obtain critical thought and to realize things, which is a blandly overstated term, to realize something is to bring reality to it, that you are bringing fruition, meaning that it's something tangible. You can hold it, you can manipulate it, you can take something that is previously intangible and put it into tangible form, and typically practiced very well through metaphorical and allegorical scenarios and presentations of information. Before we get too deep into that, it is of the utmost importance to recognize what in the world you are perceiving before you go out and about splurging on ideologies and knowledge and belief. And so in order to do so, again, kind of focusing on practicality of it and the pragmatism, we have to be, ridiculously, perhaps incredulously, open-minded. Absolutely baffling open-minded, because the nature of discerning truth is not a matter of knowledge, it's a matter of perception. Because as we learn things, we develop beliefs, and our beliefs are actually systematic productions of our mind, which guide our intuition, or at times challenge it, and so as to protect ourselves. Because in the reality of the way that belief is formed, it comes from typically a place of either fear or gratitude. And gratitude is typically expressed and verbalized as hope. However, most people don't realize that connection. But fear is typically verbalized as, I believe it's fear, really. That there's a significant difference, vastly significant difference, between believing something because you've witnessed it and because you've tested it, that you've scrutinized it, and it's actually been proven to you that there's evidence of truth in your belief. And the concept of not just the concept, but the practice of conglomerating information in a way that's able to make some sort of pigmentation, or, illustration, that's what it is, I'm thinking of color, but of an idea. So what I mean, really, in more straightforward language, is that somebody who knows truth would understand that it doesn't come out of a knowledge, it comes out of a process. It comes out of a belief that you can develop perspective that engages insight. And in that insight, you are able to divine truth, right? You're able to say, oh, well, I understand these things to be true based on the totality of the perspectives that I've gained. Um, and again, belief coming back down to perception. And one thing that is just utterly, utterly, utterly abused by humanity, one of the most absolutely pure um, mechanisms of the mind is our ability to humble ourselves and say, hey, I don't know. I don't know, and maybe somebody else could give me an idea. And now, it's not to say that that's the truth, right? But it's to say that that gives me an additional perspective and another way to look at it. And as you become more and more aware of these perspectives and of all these multifaceted realities that each of us is individually experiencing, because all of us have our own experience of reality, and to say that any one of us has the truth over the other is foolishness. But as we gain the awareness of it, it slowly, sadly, becomes more and more arbitrary to attempt to describe it or to utter it. And it becomes what we call ineffable, which means that you literally cannot speak it. Um, but you are still knowing it, and you are still aware of it. And therefore, you're able to discern the truth and function in tandem with truth, which puts you in a position to take advantage of the skill set that you developed, um, to recognize the patterns and the inner workings of our tangible reality and our subjective experience. So I prefer to talk in terms of the positive. I know I brought up some of the negative things, but I'm not here to be a critic. I'm here to be a leader and insightful in a way that helps to engage you in the positive aspects of what you are able to actually do in order to get closer to the truth. It is important to recognize and point out the pitfalls because so many people don't even recognize when they're stepping in them. Me included, I have done that so many times, which is why I aim so strongly to be aware of them. So, in the world of perceptions and belief, what we typically are exposed to is what the mind is, what psychology calls and neurology calls the default mode network, which is essentially a little circuit in your brain that lays somewhere right behind your eyes, which is the most densely correlated bundle of neurons that your brain has developed for the entirety of your life, in most cases. And essentially, why it exists, is that the body, as most of us know, uh, is attempting to constantly remain in a state of homeostasis, an equal in to an equal out, and that creates balance, right? Literally, by the laws of thermodynamics, our bodies are wired to orient ourselves in this manner. And in order to maintain that on the neurological scale, we develop what's called the neurological default mode network, and our brain allows us to be perceptive of the sort of the same um, belief systems and patterns on a daily basis in a regular way that helps us regulate our lives. It's not a bad thing. It helps simplify calculation, decision making, um, ideology, or methodology in navigating the complexities of life. The trouble is that the system is so blatantly logical that it actually disregards broad swaths of information that are being brought to us by our perceptions and our senses. And this is why it's so critical to people who are looking to change their lives. It's not for everybody. Some people aren't looking to change their lives, and in reality, maybe you're good, and that's all right. But for those who are seeking a bit of a deeper meaning or a higher purpose or understanding of even, where to begin with change, or you want to just change like maybe a couple things, not like trying to go on this huge journey. I'm definitely a huge journey guy, and I believe that it all starts in small steps. Um, and not just believe, but I know, and that if you take big leaps as well, that's great. Um, and there's so much to be unpacked there. I will not get into it now, but um, it just enthralls me how splendid and lovely the brain is as a mechanism when you learn how it works and what to do and why it works, um, and how you can use it to benefit yourself, and the others around you. So, um, really, the emphasis that I want to put on is there is a literal way in which we are sort of made to function in a world, um, of redundancy, where the default bone network stimulates our minds to activate in a way that makes sure that things are consistent. And that brings us comfort and regularity, predictability. Mind loves patterns, 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 patterns. The more I can predict it, the better I feel about it, the easier it is, and therefore, the more successful I am. Right? That's the neurological, um, objective through like the literal physiological, function of the body and the mind. Now, when it comes to our objective experience, now, objective experience, subjective experience, they get kind of convoluted, um, and it totally depends on the context in which you're describing it. But what I mean when I say our objective experience, is what do I recall? What is my witness to my perceptions, right? And the reason I call that objective is because the subjective experience is actually what you're subject to. And kind of in a weird backwards way, the objective isn't always broader than the subjective. At times, because we're functioning within the default mode network, our objective reality, our objective experience, where the bits of the perceptions that we're subject to, um, are being objectified within this very small network, versus what we are subjective to is everything, every possible sensation that you could have. And I'm also an advocate for the, uh, expansion of the definition of senses, into the realm of conscious perception, where, for example, although we have vision and we have sight as a sense, we also have an imaginary sight where we can envision something, by utilizing the same mechanism in your brain, which takes the data from your eyes and makes a picture in your mind, because all of this is witnessed in your mind. You can use that same mechanism with your eyes closed, and you can see things with your eyes closed. It's not the same, but it's still there. If I say pink elephant, well, you have a rough image of a pink elephant, and now you can't necessarily tangibly see it. Maybe you could sort of try to shape it around some of the blobs and shadows and whatnot. But the point being that our imagination is another sensation. And in addition to that, our intuition, which is kind of that like nagging feeling, we feel it oftentimes. It's, something that we're able to react to. It means that it's a stimulus. And so we have more than five senses, is the short and long of it. Uh, I would argue that we have at least seven. Um, and my point in saying that is that, this all relates back to what you are subject to, what your subjective experience is, and how your objective experience, builds your, relationship to those perceptions, which are the evidence for the rationale of your belief. And your belief is what you use as a mechanism to move through life. Literally, it defines you. What you believe and how you believe will determine how you act and behave, and how you act and behave determines how your environment responds to you, and even how you respond to yourself. Which is why change is such an interesting thing, and why it's so important to understand how all of this works and how it integrates into your life, how we go mind, body, soul, and through the layers, we discern truth, meaning, perspective, and we are able to make steps in a direction that fulfills us from the perspective of me, I, not just my body, but the conscious me who says, I came here to live and experience life, not just to exist and be subject to sort of the toils. I mean, there's always going to be some sort of toil, um, because the world works in such a way that it's constantly breathing with us. And sometimes we breathe in when it breathes out. And it's kind of just bad timing. It's like, oh, should have just breathed out. Um, and there's no real way for you to necessarily know that without a huge, huge amount of awareness. At times, it requires that we go within ourselves and outside of ourselves with our conscious energy. And something I was getting into but didn't quite reach it yet was meditation. Meditation is so crucial, and it's broadly, vastly misunderstood in a way that makes it sort of painful, because it's not complicated. Um, there's nothing difficult about meditation. It's actually natural. If you've ever been in class, like bored out of your mind, um, and you just start staring at the wall, you just stop thinking about anything, you just blanked out, yeah, you're like automatically meditating because it's part of you, and it is what you do. And at some point, you know, people become a little bit disillusioned and they say, "Well, I was dissociating," um, and no, you you had something else going on in your mind that you need to reminisce and sit in, and in order to develop yourself and flourish, you bring your soul into this world, you have to give yourself the space for that, because what we have in this life is so wildly beautiful and unimaginable, um, and ineffable, new word. Um, we all too often associate very natural occurrences with some level of disorder or some level of malfunction. And when you do that to every inexplicable or abnormal experience that science can't quite say is non-arbitrary, then therefore we can go down this rabbit hole. Like, it's so important to recognize that what you feel exists for a reason, and that what you go through isn't happening just because um, there's something wrong. It's more than that. It's something that you have the capacity to take advantage of and to build yourself, to actually grow. A lot of the time we get faced with trials and troubles, tribulations and whatnot, and our reaction to that is that somehow this means that I'm not good enough, or somehow this means there's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. There's something that you have to get better at. There's something that the world is asking you to be stronger. And not even just asking, but telling you you are stronger. Otherwise, it wouldn't feel bad, right? Okay, so get with me. If you sit a lot, like let's say you're like me a long time ago, where you're depressed and immobilized and you literally cannot move, you cannot think yourself out of the thought loop that you're stuck in, or you're not even observing a thought loop, you're just brain dead, it feels like. That is not something that's there to beat you, and it doesn't feel bad. If you were not meant to overcome it, like, hold on for a second. I really I need to put some emphasis on this. If you weren't meant to overcome that sensation, you would never take any issue to it. You would never be bothered by it. The fact that you are bothered means that you know you're more capable. And the difference is whether or not you're in alignment with that knowledge, whether or not you say, yeah, you're right, I can overcome this. That's step one, just step one. I can overcome this. Say it whether you believe it or not, I can. I must be able to because I don't agree with it. I'm not in alignment with it. And and this is why the anxiety depression loop is so visceral and convoluted, and why people get stuck in it is because they feed off of each other, and it gives you the stimulation of progress without the satisfaction of growth. And it really, truly, it's one of the most, um, I have to say, it's one of the most underrated issues in in all of our society, that I believe, I mean, maybe even in human experience, that you can get down on you about your life and then feel like that's your purpose. Like, not just not feel like necessarily, but you behave as though the whole point of your life is to annihilate yourself, to just remove it, to just numb it all, get rid of it. Therefore, I don't have to worry about it. Therefore, I've solved the problem. That's not that's not logical. Um, because it's kind of similar to like saying, "Oh, well, my computer's low on battery, so I'm gonna take the charger and I'm gonna plug it in the wall because my charger is what gets my battery to charge." But then you never plug the charger into your laptop. You got like certain parts of the system in place, and the logic is stepwise. Yeah, you're right. You just didn't fill the gap. The gap is that you're not supposed to numb that feeling. You're supposed to lean into it. You're supposed to be like, what do you exist for? And and do I agree with it? And now fundamentally, we can recognize whether or not we agree with it by knowing whether or not it feels good or feels right. And if you get into that weird space in between where it's like, I don't know if it feels good, or I don't know if it's right or wrong, or I don't know if there even is a right or a wrong, it's actually a really good place to be. I mean, it's kind of like freedom. You have a unique opportunity where your mind is saying, you know what? Anything can happen. And you can go out and observe and obtain new perspectives so long as you give yourself permission. Now, the difficulty arises when you're in that numbness and you become content with it. Not because it actually aligns with you, but you become content with it because you've been struggling for so long that you begin to submit to it, right? But at the same time, if you're really depressed, um, I've been there. You submit to it, and if you go through that submission, you will come out on the other side. The problem arises when you try to do something to overcome it. The mind will resolve itself. The mind is going in this errant feedback loop that says, hey, like, this is something right. No, no. and, and at the same time, it's not your job to fight it. The mind will resolve itself. It's kind of like if you took the same path to school every day, you don't have to remind yourself the directions every time after you've done after you've done it the 10 times, right? After you've done it 10 times, you can just blank out and make your way to school, and then you'll end up there somehow. Because the mind is a self-resolving mechanism. Um, so this is a long way from where we started and a longer video than I intended to make, but I really wanted to get this off my chest and just share with you some simple concepts um, that often get misconstrued and misconveyed. If you don't know how to meditate, please just like um, go for a walk, um, and then like as soon as you feel like sitting down somewhere, sit down, and then just be there and just do that for like, I mean, if that's difficult for you, you know, just do it for like a minute and then move on. That's okay. But do it again. And if you feel better about that, you know, go and do it for 5 or 10, or half an hour, or if you have an hour, I suppose it would be okay to do it for an hour. But I would recommend if you're struggling with anxiety or depression and kind of like mental burnout, thought loop, spin, 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 procrastination, ADHD, all stems from all that. If you're struggling with that, I don't recommend that you go sit on a bench for an hour, um, but that you give yourself space to change. And really, it's all about the meeting of the inner world with the outer world. That is meditation. Meditation is a reconciliation. It's a remembering or a recognition of the things that are, um, and expanding that, like giving yourself permission to navigate to other parts of your experience beyond what is your immediate concern and um, your brain's most prominent issue, because typically that's not going to be solved in a self-contained situation. It's kind of like if a fish tank was dirty, um, it's not gonna be solved by keeping the fish in there and feeding them and not aerating or you know, you have to you have to take the water out. You have to, you know, clean up. You have to take new water, put new water in. Like you have to expose the system to new stimuli so that the balance can be retained in a way that's sustainable. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of a mucky fish tank until it becomes so mucky that you start getting bacteria and you know they hurt your fish. Um, Random metaphor, but you get the point. The whole idea is to get out there, expose yourself to something new, identify how you react within, and merely observe it. Um, do not attempt to manipulate or derive or anything like that manually because it's already going to be done for you because that is the literal basic function of the brain from the time you're born. So if you try to go stick your fingers in there, you're kind of like you're playing with fire big time. And that's usually kind of the issue. Some level, we start reaching for control of things, and we begin to associate our our habits and our decisions and our behaviors with our own literal identity, as if we have any idea of who we're going to be 5 days from now or 15 years from now, or uh, sorry for all you existentialists out there, but who knows? I could die tomorrow. And there's no reason for me to go on and think, hey, like, I'm going to define myself by this and I'm going to, um, you know, create uh, some sort of figment or figure in my mind around this particular set of uh, beliefs, in particular if they're negative or influencing me in a way that does not bring me satisfaction, that is joyful and peaceful. Uh, that is so crucial because mere satisfaction is not good. And mere, you know, sort of this uh, stimulation, really, it's hard for people to differentiate between stimulation and fulfillment. They are highly correlated in the reality of how we sense them in our bodies, but where we hold them in our bodies, that, where we hold it in our bodies, where it resides, whether it's sort of this deep, heavy feeling of that's radiating warmth, or some level of makes you feel full, right? That's fulfillment. If it's simply something that's satisfying, then it's going to be something that feels like a click, or a jump, or uh, there are things that can be deeply satisfying, but they move through you. Like they don't sit, they don't rest and fill you. They just go. They just move through you. And hopefully that makes sense. And I know this was quite a bit. So let me know what you think in the comments. I'm very happy to hear your thoughts, and I would love to engage with you on a deeper level if anybody is ever open to that. And I look forward to the next time I get my whimsical whimsiness to speak on esoteric matters of reality and how we exist. So, praise be. Have a blessed day. Take care.